Western Hockey League Commissioner Dan Near joins us on the cage. Dan's resume was impressive. Before he took his current job, he worked for over a decade in the NHL's marketing department before becoming the global head of hockey for Adidas. Dan took over the commissioner's job from Indian Head's own Ron Robinson in February of last year. Go down to Indian Head. Lots of people still know Ron and remember him very well. A few months later, as I said earlier, Dan, you handed the Ed Schnauf Cup to the Western Hockey League champion Moose Jaw Warriors. I was there. It was so thrilling. That's the one time I've seen you live. So what's it like? That was your first one. You've now done another to Medicine Hat, but what's it like, or what did you feel like that particular night when you gave the Warriors the cup?
Well, I think that there were a whole bunch of feelings, but the first one was elation for the community. You think of what the Western Hockey League represents in all of the towns and communities in which we operate. And been there a long time without a championship, right? A number of the Saskatchewan teams have had some success, but Moose Jaw never won. And the idea of winning in your home building, seeing the tears and the chills that are running down and walking out behind the RCMP officers, and with that historic trophy, it was a very special moment for me. And I've had the privilege of being at a number of NHL Stanley Cups over the years. And believe it or not, one of my first jobs in sports at the NHL was when the guys won the cup, I'd run out and give them their championship hat.
You're kidding.
And one of the first ones was a Western League alumnus, Ryan Getzlaff in Anaheim in 2006.
From
my
Regina.
very first year. And I remember being out there and being at ice level in that moment. You realize what it means for the fan base, what it means for the players, what it means for their families. And getting to do that every year is honestly like the highlight of the year.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hard things that happen over the course of the year, but handing out the trophy is pretty special.
Well, and the thing is, you're sharing, in many cases, one of the best moments of these players' lives. A lot of them won't go on to play pro. Even if they do play pro, they'll always hearken back to that moment, and they'll always remember you. Like, you're going to be immortalized for every player in the Moose Jaw Warriors, and probably a lot of people in the stands like myself and Moose Jaw, which is sort of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I that day, or maybe it was a day before, I went into a local shoe repair in Moose Jaw. And, first of all, they recognized me in the brand new commissioner. I thought that was kind of cool. And more importantly, the woman that worked there was a billet mom. Her son was an official in the league. The other guy that worked there played in the league. And we represent a lot to communities. And the idea that on that night or any given night in the Western League, the whole community is tuned in to the sport and into the game. That's something that professional sports really can't say the same way that we can. And it really is a reflection of what we mean to Western Canada. And again, I'm very, very privileged to be part of it.
Well, hopefully with Maddox Schultz coming to Regina, you'll be here shortly in a few years for the Pats. We'll see how that works out. Well, Dan, it's sort of old news already. As of November, CHL players can now move to the NCAA once they finish high school. And some prominent players, of course, have already done that. As we know, is it fair to say these players moving south are making all the headlines while a large number of players that are staying in the CHL, nobody's talking about that? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is fair. And it's a really interesting time. It's funny, the very first player was a Regina player, Braxton Whitehead, who even before the rule change said he's going to go down to Arizona State, and he's an overage player. And at the time we said, hey, this relieves attention around players at 14, 15 years old having to decide if the NCAA or major junior is the path they want to take. Now they can do both. And I give everyone involved a lot of credit because it's a tough decision to make, and everyone's trying to establish what is the best development path for them. And what I would tell you is I've never heard anyone complain that, oh, the biggest mistake I made is I stayed in the Western Hockey League too long. No one has ever said that. I have heard the other way, right? I've heard guys that have left early or gone on to other pastures and said, hey, it didn't work out as well as I thought. But This thing will normalize. We'll get a better sense of what the future development path looks like. But what's important to recognize is we view ourselves as a league that develops you to be a professional hockey player.
Right.
If you need more time, U Sports is there. NCAA is now there, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think this trend that we're seeing in the world right now, finish high school as fast as you can, get to the NCAA as fast as you can. Everybody's in a rush to do everything. But I'll tell you what, the development experience on and off the ice, but also the life experience you build living with billets and working with your education advisor and riding the bus with your teammates. We put a lot of stock in the character that builds for these young men and puts them in a position to succeed down the road.
WHL Commissioner Dan Near joins us on SportsCage. We're going to talk about what happened in the first round of the last NHL draft in just a moment, because that made your point very obvious. A few weeks ago, you probably know him, Jerry Johansson of the Sports Corporation, joined us on the cage, and his general message was that everything would adjust and the quality of play in the Western Hockey League would remain very strong. His feeling was the NHL, or rather the Western Hockey League, will now recruit a larger number of elite younger players, including Americans, at one end, at the younger end, and at the other end, you may lose a few elite players towards the end of their junior career. So at this point, Dan, are you seeing more and stronger younger players coming into the CHL and Western Hockey League?
Yeah, a year ago, we were spending time when we talked about recruitment. We were saying, okay, we want 100% of the top end Canadian talent. And I think we want to increase the number of Americans who look at major junior as the path. Now we're in a spot where everyone understands that Western Hockey League is the place you would want to be, no matter what trajectory you want to be on, whether you want to go to college, whether you want to go to the NHL, whether you want to do something else. The very best players all want to be here. And so I think that the configuration of the league will look a little different in this year as it relates to the high caliber young players that at other points in time may not have been sure whether they wanted to follow the major junior route. On the older end of the spectrum, certainly the data points are there that suggest, wow, there's been some good players who are experimenting with the NCAA route. I think this one is just a story that is going to take a little bit of time to bear out. I think a couple things are going to happen. We're going to understand, how does it work out for a 19-year-old third-round NHL pick to go and play in a 35-game environment, move across the world to the East Coast of the U.S., and is he going to be welcomed in? Is the lack of playing in playoff series going to impact the way that he needs to develop to be an NHL player? What are the different aspects or attributes of that experience that are positive, and which ones might be better served being in junior hockey at 18 and 19 years old? And it's a story that's yet to play out. On the front end, though, we know that it's going to benefit us. On the back end, it's going to take some time.
Well, at the NHL draft in June, 32 players, of course, selected in the draft. 21 came from the CHL, which is almost a record, I believe, including 9 from the Western Hockey League. So the WHL did so well. A dominating statement as to who develops NHL players, as you said. So when you're looking at maybe more coming in and the odd one leaving, have you talked about, would you add another older Euro? Would you add another 20-year-old? Or do you really care at all about that?
It'll take time. We are adding a Euro. So the CHL made a decision to permit a third Euro this year. And there were a lot of things that have gone into that. And, in some instances, you're trying to take your time and see how things play out. In the other instances, like, hey, let's be opportunistic and make sure that we, have enough spots for the best available players. And we think there's room for a third Euro. We've added a team in Penticton. We're planning to add a team in Chilliwack. And so the player pool, needs to expand to accommodate that. And I do think we'll see some of that. But to your point around the success in the NHL draft, to me, that's what I think young high-end players need to understand, is that if you want to be drafted into the NHL, which is what most people would view as their number one goal as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, the Western Hockey League is where you want to be, and it should be a target and a goal for you. And we're going to create an environment and an ecosystem that enables you to develop to that level. And then once you are drafted, prepare you for whatever that next step is going to be as well.
Now, I'm sure you talk to general managers in the Western Hockey League, and from time to time, I would guess that job, being a GM of a Western Hockey League team, has never, ever been even remotely as busy as it is now. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I'm the new kid on the block, and so you'll have to get a couple of them on and have them trade some more stories. But I think that it is more complex. I think the recruiting territory is bigger, the competitive landscape is trickier, the importance of delivering a really high-end player experience, whether that's the type of catering and nutritional value that we offer, the strength and conditioning experience, the skills coaching, all of these things that you're trying to plan around your team, in addition to just, building the right squad, is tricky. And, ask Victoria. They've had a couple of guys that they didn't expect to leave, go off to choose NCAA this year earlier than any of us would have anticipated. And it's a shock to the system. And I think that it's going to shorten recruitment cycles, and, and teams are going to make bigger plays earlier on, knowing that there's less certainty. I think we're used to living in a world where someone came to us at 15, 16, and we were pretty sure they were staying through 19 and maybe through 20. And with those changes, I think the general managers are all going to figure out, how do I build my team? How do I configure my roster so I have the necessary tools to be a successful club and to have sustainability over multiple years.
Now, you're bringing in a smaller market team with the Penticton Vs, so I'm assuming you're confident in trying to improve a player's sort of experience in the Western Hockey League. You're confident that the younger, or rather the smaller markets, can also do that. They can compete with larger ones in trying to improve the experience for the players, are you?
So, I don't know if I draw a correlation between the size of the market and the player experience. We're certainly, it'll be different in a large city versus a small community, but I think we're trying to select communities that care about hockey, that have a long, strong legacy and history in supporting the sport, that fit into our travel model. Of course, you think about Penticton, and there's certainly a travel convenience with the BC division and even into the U.S., clubs like Wenatchee and Spokane and Seattle and Everett. And, and I think that plays well as far as, what are you looking for when you contemplate a team? And you add that to the fact that they have some of the very, very best facilities in Western Canada and are accustomed to creating a player environment for young men and players who aspire to go to the NCAA one day if they don't make the NHL. They're going to be a good fit for all of those reasons. And their franchise is historic. The Vs have great legacy and history. They've got a great leadership group who know what they're doing.
Well, I looked up Vs, and I was surprised to hear that it's a variety of a peach in the Okanagan. That's what Vs apparently means, which I thought, that's interesting. Now, you've now got a president of the CHL, Dan McKenzie, along with the three commissioners, you being one of them, of the WHL, OHL, and the Quebec Maritime Junior League. Has this NCAA situation, has it brought you closer? Like, has it brought the three CHL leagues closer, do you think, Dan?
Well, the CHL as a whole, like that, the entity out of Toronto, Dan McKenzie's organization, they do a tremendous job at scaling things together when we want to be a collective. So whether that's the Memorial Cup or the prospect game, the NHL draft, or driving commercial value of our intellectual property, they are fantastic partners in that. What I would say about bringing the commissioners closer together, the NCAA probably hasn't hurt that, but as you probably know, all three of us flipped after really long-standing tenures, from Ron in our league, Dave Branch in Ontario, and Gilles Courteau in Quebec.
Yes.
So you got the three new guys, all of whom are new to the junior hockey space. Like, I've been in hockey my whole career, but not in a junior hockey capacity. And so
Yeah.
I think that we all have a new mindset and a new idea of what we think collaboration looks like. And we really do see ourselves as peers, we're not competitors, so to speak. We work together a lot. We ideate around, hey, well, what could we do to generate better scale and make our sport bigger? And then we also make vastly independent decisions when we think we need to do something that's in the interest of our territory or our clubs. And so it's a really good working relationship. I talk to Dan and the commissioners virtually every day.
Okay.
And it might be on an issue around the imports, it might be an issue around a rule, or it might be something around the NCAA, and we're thrilled to do it.
Now, you talk about you'll make independent decisions. The Quebec Maritimes League has banned fighting as of last year, a year ago. Where does the Western Hockey League stand on that at the moment?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that the player safety is always top of mind, and if we monitor data and we monitor the trajectory of fights in our league, and we keep a very very close eye on it. We don't like unnecessary fights. We do have incremental penalties for multiple fight situations, for staged fights, for instigator, and so we do take that seriously. But at the same time, I think that we pride ourselves in developing players to be ready for the National Hockey League, and in most cases we try to emulate the rule framework as much as we can. And at the moment, fighting is a part of the NHL game, and we think that we, in a way, we'd be doing players a disservice to be ill prepared going into the NHL, having to look at a different environment in that regard. And so, at the moment, it's not a topic of discussion as it relates to making any kind of significant change.
Well, it was a bold move by the Quebec Maritimes, Junior Hockey League for sure. Did they get any blowback from the NHL? You talk about it's a fact of life in the NHL. Did the Quebec Maritimes League hear about it, or how did that evolve behind the scenes, or can you even say?
Well, it happened before my time. I think it's better you have Mario on, and he'll tell you all the reasons they've found it to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
It is a matter we talk about, and whether we should move independently or together on this. And at the moment, this is one that we like how we're doing it, and we're sticking with that for the time being.
Now, as you said, a year from now, Chilliwack also enters the league. And so you'll have, the most teams of any CHL league. You already do. What would you say to the people that say, well, you've got more teams than Quebec, the second most populated province in Canada. You've got more teams than Ontario, the most populated province in Canada. How can we win the Memorial Cup? Or, being that you've got more teams, dilute the product? Or does it matter because all teams do once they get into Memorial Cup is they just make trades and, sort of bring in all as many top players as they can. So does it matter, or does it matter? I guess that's the question.
So I think that there's a reasonable argument to be made that less teams strengthens the player pool, and in turn could give you a better shot at winning the Memorial Cup. I probably would also say that in the Western League, we're so fiercely competitive with one another. We beat each other up pretty good by the time we get there, and there's no courtesy in trades or player movement because we're trying to enable our territory to win. Even our playoff format, we often have clubs going interdivision in the first round and playing a best of 7 series across vast distance. I think there are a whole bunch of variables that influence whether you're going to be competitive to win a Memorial Cup. But what I think we've got going for us, and a good data point or reference point, certainly is the NHL draft, but also certainly is Hockey Canada's development programs. We have a lot of strong players in our pipeline. The players that we're recruiting right now to join the league at a younger age have never been better. And so I'm not really worried about dilution. I think that there's certainly a valid argument that it'll lessen our chances of winning the Memorial Cup. But look, I want to have enough spots for all the great players to play. I want to have a vibrant and competitive league. I want rivalries between our markets. And if you think what Vancouver Chilliwack will be and what Penticton and Kelowna will be, like, this is going to bring a lot to the league. And so I think the lion's share of the stuff adds value for us.
Well, no other CHL league covers Portland to Brandon, that's for sure. So it's really, because of that, it's definitely a different situation, as you said, and that's very true. So you're a year and a half into your job now. Any surprises, good or bad, since you've taken over the job?
I think the biggest surprise in a role like this is it's nearly impossible to keep everybody happy. I've got a fiduciary responsibility to the owners, but I've got a responsibility to players and their parents. I've got a responsibility to fans. And with any decision, you never have unanimous support. And so you might think you've done a really great thing, but you might have 20% of your audience that thinks you've done it all wrong and you should have done it differently. I'm really grateful and thankful that I've been given some rope here. I think that the competitive landscape and the environment has prompted our league to say, hey, we're a really great league, but what are the things we can do to be better? I think that if you look at our new streaming product in Victory Plus, we've really done something interesting as far as making the game accessible and available to fans across the country and across the world. We're raising our operating standards. We have a new partnership with Under Armour, which is exciting for us. Bauer's coming on as our new equipment supplier. The new Western Canadian model, where players like Maddox Schultz are going to have a chance to play 34 games without necessarily committing 100% to junior hockey at 15. Like, a lot has happened, and I think I'm surprised at how much has happened in the first year, but I wouldn't give any of it back. It's a lot of fun. It's challenging, but we got a lot to accomplish ahead of us.
Well, a former CFL commissioner, who I won't name, told me once, it's like herding cats. But anyway, being a commissioner. So how is your streaming business going? Because I'm starting to watch more and more Western Hockey League games streaming as the last few years, for sure, for my own self.
Out of the gate, it's been amazing. It's easy to have success in the playoffs because those are the games that everybody needs to watch. And so we're going to have to make sure we make people aware of what's going on. But when I think about moving fans into a higher degree of enthusiasm around our league, it starts with your home team, but it cascades. And if my home team's not playing, what else am I going to do that night? Am I going to binge, Breaking Bad on Netflix? Am I going to go watch the Winnipeg Jets or the Toronto Maple Leafs in the NHL? Am I going to watch the Raptors? Or are the Tigers coming in next week? And I want to see them. And I think that the ease by which you can really immerse yourself in the WHL, we're just getting started. We are going to elevate the production and highlights and replays and pre and post game shows and those types of things. One of the things I'm learning from the young people in my household, who I have 3 teenagers, is they just watch whatever comes up next on their YouTube feed. And so the idea of behind the scenes content and get to know you with the players, these are all things that I think Victory Plus is going to put us in a position that gets people way more dialed in to the WHL than they ever thought they could be. I think we thought we had peaked, right? Because everybody in Moose Jaw was already watching all the Warriors games. But now this idea that they can watch all this ancillary content that we'll put on the channel, that they can watch the other teams in their division because they like the rivalries and are interested, and pay attention to what Landon DuPont's doing in Everett because he's the next up and coming star in the league. I think that that's a really interesting opportunity for us as we're trying to get fans to consume at the next level.
I sort of look at, one last question, I sort of look at the Western Hockey League like Major League Baseball in some respects too, Dan, because, nationally, you can argue how Major League Baseball is doing, but regionally, the local rivalries in Major League Baseball are still so healthy. And as I said, you cover half the entire country and another country in the Western Hockey League. Is sort of those regional rivalries, is that the engine of the league, do you think?
I think it's a big part of it. The communities are very proud. We are very local in nature, and you can be a fan of an NHL team, but also have a WHL team. And it's an additional layer of fandom. And it's something, in a lot of the places where we operate, there are no other sports teams that you can identify so closely with. And you can see the players at the grocery store, and everyone is in your community. And I think that breeds a degree of rivalry, and we try and take advantage of that as much as we can with fan buses and road trips and that kind of thing. And it's really unique and cool about our league. And again, it's a real privilege.
Well, thank you very much, Dan Near, the Western Hockey League Commissioner, joining us on SportsCage. That was very interesting. Had a lot of fun. You're going to have a great year, I'm sure. And as I said, see how Maddox Schultz does in Regina. A lot of people are very excited about Maddox Schultz coming along. And hopefully you're here in a few years, like I said. But nothing against the Warriors and the Broncos. We cheer for them, too. So anyway, have a good afternoon. Have a good afternoon.
Good stuff.
Then SportsCage continues in just a moment.